Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster, Tarpley in Washington, D.C. In our first segments, we went through the emerging bloc, Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. And that would be an economic, monetary, strategic, and probably military alliance against the rampage of Anglo-American imperialism through the world, which for the non-thinking classes is assumed to be the Arab Spring. It is, in effect, an attack on all nation-states in the world, and it extends to Italy, to Belarus, to Kazakhstan, to Azerbaijan. The intent, of course, is to take it all the way to Moscow, all the way to Beijing, all the way to Jakarta. They're already under attack through the WikiLeaks preparatory bombardment out there in Indonesia. So it's a worldwide attack. It is not an Arab question, just that the Arabs, being more oppressed and having these long-term authoritarian governments of various types, have provided a pool of people who are able, that the CIA has been able to bring into action using the pent-up resentment over real grievances, but then detonating that with the help of WikiLeaks and, of course, the golden youth, suitably brainwashed by Facebook and Google and Twitter and the rest of them, or really by brigades of cyber trolls of the kind we saw at the State Department. Right, a new class, a new military academy graduate class of 5,000 cyber trolls, cyber warriors have been put out from the State Department to go in there and get on the Internet, probably with the special U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. AFRICOM technology that allows each cyber troll to assume up to 100 identities on the screen. And with this, you can fill the Internet with lying propaganda. In Libya, so we're going to have foreign officers, British, so far it's British, French, and Italian, coming in, and I see them taking over regiments. We're going to have colonial regiments with the European officer, and then the rest of them are the natives. So isn't that wonderful? Back to imperialism, back to colonialism. Thank you, Jalil. Thank you, Yunus. Thank you, Hiftar, for bringing the colonialists back in grand style. And that's not the only thing. Admiral Mullen now announces that since Libya is deadlocked, Obama has ordered, and Gates has also said this, U.S. Predator drones have been ordered by Barkey to come in and start killing Libyans. And that is now the singing tomorrow of democracy. The fruits of the color revolution, the fruits of the people power coup, these odious, cowardly Predator drones flying over the country, trying to assassinate people. And, of course, Gaddafi, his family, and others in Tripoli will be the prime targets. An odious and hated gesture. It's also, as David Ignatius points out, David Ignatius today in the Washington Post, David Ignatius repeating this on the Diana Rehm show on National Public Radio, this is a colossal propaganda mistake. There's nothing more hated around the world than the Predator drone. If there's one symbol of an odious, anti-human imperialism, it's this idea, and cowardly too, the idea of the Predator drone that flies around. There's some CIA honcho sitting in Langley in an easy chair with a drink and an air conditioner, and he's spending his days killing people around the world just on the general vague idea that they might somehow be linked to something the U.S. doesn't want. Notice, in Pakistan, if you're part of al-Qaeda, they want to come and kill you if they can claim that you are. But in Libya, it's the reverse. If you're fighting al-Qaeda, they're going to kill you. And if you're a member of al-Qaeda, say the city council of Darna, then you're going to be spared. They won't be going there. So this contradiction would be a gold mine for obvious propaganda. I'm telling the truth about what's going on. It is an unsustainable contradiction. So Ignatius is correct that there's going to be another wave of hatred. And I think this may indeed begin to undercut the entire hysteria around the color revolution, that the reality is not democracy and singing tomorrows. The reality is the hideous face of imperialism, arrogant, brutal, genocidal, full of contempt, full of racism. Speaking of racism, we have Al Jazeera finally reporting on the atrocities of the rebels. This is very interesting. So far, the propaganda line is that Gaddafi wants to carry out a massacre of the Libyan rebels, except that in the cities that Gaddafi has taken over, be it Ras Lanuf or Brega or Zawiya, there is no massacre. Where are the reports of the massacre, dear Al Jazeera? You have nothing to show. What we did have yesterday, Thursday, the 21st of April, in the 1 p.m., 2 p.m., and 3 p.m. newscast on Al Jazeera, a special report. It started off live from Sue Turton, Turton, their British correspondent, showing a black African in Benghazi being lynched, hanged by the neck, stabbed to death, and then decapitated by our wonderful heroes of democracy, by the forces of Jalil and Yunus. He was charged with being a black African mercenary for Gaddafi. There's a kangaroo court functioning in Benghazi. How'd you like to fall into the hands of them? They're from Al-Qaeda. You're just a normal Libyan, and they sentence you to death. And that's going on in Darna, too, where the judges are all from Al-Qaeda. So this is the reality. There is no proof of atrocities per se on the part of Gaddafi, but plenty of proof of racist massacres, lynching, and mass murder by the forces of Jalil and Yunus against these black Africans, some of whom, of course, are most likely Libyans from the southwest corner, the Fezzan province, where there are plenty of Libyans who also happen to be black. Being black in Benghazi is now the biggest risk in this entire war situation. None of this prevents the degenerate Sarkozy from welcoming the terrorist Jalil to the Élysée Palace. I can think of General de Gaulle rolling over in his grave with rage and shame. And I would add, quelle honte, quelle honte, quelle honte. What degradation, what shame on France now being brought by Sarkozy. Time to look at the competition. Time to look at a person like Villepin. Whatever you think of his internal policies, this would, and I think those have actually evolved. Villepin seems to be showing some idea of social responsibility in the real Gaullist tradition. Somebody has got to put Sarkozy into the defeated column, and it hopefully will not simply be this racist Marine Le Pen. So we've got Senator McCain cavorting with these terrorists. Senator McCain is now the best friend of Jalil and Yunus, the terrorist bosses of Benghazi. That's another profile and courage for the senator. Now, the other thing you've got going on is this is beginning to look a little bit like the Spanish Civil War, if the following report can be credited. Here we have Debka. Now, Debka, of course, is the Mossad. So here's what the Mossad has to say about Libya. Could be true, maybe not. We'll check it out. But here it is. They say that weapons and volunteers are now coming into Libya. The weapons and the volunteers and intelligence, maybe satellite generated, right? What the NATO forces are doing when the airstrikes are on the way, who knows what. People who can look over the Mediterranean from a satellite. According to Debka, again, the voice of the Mossad, they say this is coming from China, from Russia, from Ukraine, from Belarus. The Belarus one is fairly well established, that Gaddafi was playing the Belarus card. This we knew. And a lot of it's being channeled through Serbia, Serbia, which has a grudge and a justified one against the U.S. and NATO for those 3 months of bombings that blew up the bridges over the Danube back in the spring of 1999. Greatest act of historical vandalism in post-war Europe up to that point. So we've got support for Gaddafi allegedly coming in based on the idea that the Chinese have figured out that one of the main goals of this is to cut off the oil from Libya to China, to cut off the Chinese cooperation there. Back in a minute.